So recently I posted this video about the tradition of the Afikomen. Did you know that there's an amazing Passover tradition that pictures the death, burial, and resurrection of the Messiah? They have a bag like this one, a matzah bag, and it has inside of it not one, not two, but 3 pieces of matzah. Then, during the Seder, the middle piece is taken out and it is broken. The larger half of the matzah is taken and placed back in between the top and the bottom piece of matzah. The smaller half is then taken and wrapped in a cloth or a napkin, and it is hidden until after the meal. After the meal, the kids go and try and find this piece of matzah called the Afikomen, and whoever finds it gets a prize. What we have in this amazing tradition known as the Afikomen shows us the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, the Messiah. And I had this question, and by the way, it's not a stupid question. Is this a Jewish tradition? And if so, how can it be about Jesus? Well, I'm glad you asked. Bear with me for a couple minutes. I want to share with you the historical significance of the Afikomen and my theory about how it came to be. A Jewish scholar, Chaim Raphael, in his book, A Feast of History, the Drama of Passover Through the Ages, says the Seder was more sharply defined in its present form in the century after the destruction of the temple, say between 100 and 150 CE. Jewish scholar David Daub argues persuasively that this is exactly the case in his writings on the subject. He says that the decisive framework for a messianic ritual is there in the early sources, in arguing not only for a messianic understanding of the Afikomen, but for the use of the Afikomen before 70 AD. Now, what do the rabbis and the Jewish people teach about those 3 pieces of matzah inside the Afikomen? Well, the majority opinion is that it stands for the Kohanim, meaning the priests, the Levites, and the Israelites. But once again, Jewish historian David Daub believes very strongly that this leads back to a more simple messianic significance than what is believed today about the priests, the Levites, and the Israelites. Or if you believe that it's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, neither of those theories makes sense with the middle board being taken out and broken and half of it being wrapped in a napkin. It doesn't make sense. Jewish sources such as the Talmud like to say that the word Afikomen means entertainment or dessert, but that just doesn't make sense with a piece of matzah. That is not dessert. The Greek word for Afikomen is Afikomenos, used in an aorist tense, which thus means he has come. So how in the world did this tradition get in place today in Jewish homes that don't believe in Jesus? Between 132 and 136 AD, we have an event known as the Bar Kokhba Revolt, which resulted in almost 600,000 Jewish people losing their lives. This revolt was led by a man named Simon ben Kosiba, who was renamed Bar Kokhba by Rabbi Akiva, who believed Bar Kokhba to be the Messiah, thus his name Bar Kokhba meaning son of the star. At this time, the vast majority of all of the Christians in Israel had a Jewish ethno-religious background. They were mostly Jews who had believed that Jesus was their Messiah. They were aware of what Jesus had taught in Luke 21, verses 20 through 22, where he says, "And when ye see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Then let them which are in Judea flee into the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out. And let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled." Although this passage is referring to a yet unfulfilled siege on Jerusalem that happens at the end of the tribulation period, the Hebrew Christians of the early 2nd century actually believed it to be occurring then. And so the majority of them fled Judea and escaped the massacre that followed. I believe that the tradition of the Afikomen originates with those surviving Judean Jews who escaped the massacre of the Bar Kokhba revolt. The majority of them believed that Jesus was the Messiah. All of Judaism today celebrates the tradition of the Afikomen, but they don't realize that it was most likely created by Jewish believers in the 1st and 2nd century who were so inspired by Jesus' symbolism of the unleavened bread symbolizing his body in that Last Supper Passover meal that they created a Passover tradition that expanded upon that symbolism to encapsulate not only the death, but also the burial and resurrection of their Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus.